Welcome to Living a Sustainable Faith, and I'm Krista. Today I'm going to make Saskatoon Jam. A few years ago on our property, we noticed that we had these bushes that produced a berry, and nobody in our area really talked about the berry. No one ever expressed doing anything with these berries, and on our property in particular, they grow wild, and we have a lot of them. And my husband decided to taste one, and then we kind of started investigating what kind of berry is this? So I started talking with local people, and we looked it up on the internet, and the name of the berry has many names. In our area in northern Idaho, they call it a service berry or a Juneberry. Up in Canada, we're really close to the Canadian border, there's a town by the name of Saskatoon, and they named the berry Saskatoon berries. And they make jam out of the berries, and they do a lot of things, cobblers, pies. I particularly really like the jam. It tastes great in a jam. And the Saskatoon berry, or Juneberry you could say, looks like this. It's kind of, in my mind's eye, a cross between a blueberry and a huckleberry. We also have wild huckleberries up here in northern Idaho as well. So this berry is, it's not terribly sweet, it's not terribly tart, but when you make it into jam, it tastes really good. So I have picked all my berries. As you can see, I've got all my containers over here. I just pick and use old cottage cheese, yogurt containers to store my berries. And I'm ready to wash them, process them, and make some jam. So let's go ahead and get started making Saskatoon jam. My first step in making my jam is I wash all my berries. And with the Saskatoon berry, you want to make sure that you get the stems off. There's some that might be, that have fallen into your containers that are maybe shriveled up, or they're not good to process. So you just kind of want to weed through them as you're washing them. Because what I do is I take my strainer, I put in my berries, and I rinse them off, and then I have measured them to see how many cups of berries I have. Because for this particular recipe, 9 cups of berries that aren't crushed, that aren't cooked down, so that are just fresh and ripe, 9 cups of berries makes one batch. And I'm cleaning my last batch of berries here, and it looks like I have 28 cups of fresh berries, which means I'm going to have probably 9 goes into 28 3 times. I'm going to have 3, maybe a little bit more than 3 batches. So that really helps me out, because now I know how much sugar, how much pectin, and is what I'm going to do this year, which is new for me, is I'm going to add, because my recipe calls for orange liqueur. So I'm going to actually make a batch and add the orange liqueur this year, just to see what it tastes like and see if I want to do it again in the future. And the recipe that I am using is from my favorite canning book. Do any of you ladies have this book? I love this book. This is my go-to canning book, and I've said that before on some of my other videos, but this is the one. And believe it or not, this book actually has Saskatoon Jam in it. It's the only one out of my canning books that actually had, the Saskatoon berry mentioned, or the service berry, or the Juneberry. This is the one, and it's right here is my recipe. Is that fun? I love it. Anyway, this recipe calls for orange liqueur, so I'm going to try that with one of my batches and see how it turns out. I am just about done washing my berries. Now my next step is to get them on my stove and start cooking them down, and I crush them up a little bit. And then I'm going to add my lemon juice and my pectin, and sugar comes last. So let's get going with the next step of cooking down the berries and crushing them up. All right, here I am, and I'm ready to put it on my stove. And my pot is full, as you can see, with my berries. I want to see how much this cooks down before I add my sugar and pectin and everything, just to see. I may need to divide this up and cook different batches at a time while I'm adding my sugar and my pectin. So here we go. Let's put it on the stove, and we'll see how much this actually cooks down. So I've got my stove turned on, and I use a propane stove in particular, which You could use any kind of stovetop, electric or propane. It works either way for canning. And I've got this ready and I'm going to start cooking it down. And I actually use a potato masher. A good old fashioned potato masher to crush my berries. This is not really a total canning tool, but you know what? For crushing berries, it comes in very handy. And I can already hear the berries sizzling. Can you hear that? Let me go ahead and get started crushing these down and cooking them up before I add the lemon juice, the pectin, and the sugar. At the same time that I'm cooking these down, I also have my canner with my water in it, and behind here I actually have my jars ready so that they're getting hot and getting ready for processing. I do the old school. I still put my jars in a water bath, and I just like to do it that way. Some people put it in, they do it in a dishwasher. I don't have a dishwasher because I'm off grid, so I need to do it this way. And also my oven, I don't like to I'm not going to put the heat on today for the oven, so I'm just going to do it this way by the burner. So I'm going to sterilize my jars that way. So I've got these two things going while I'm cooking my berries. Okay, I've been cooking down my berries, and they are not everything will fit in this pot. You know what I'm gonna do? This is called, when things don't work, improvise a little bit. I'm gonna graduate to a bigger pot or a bigger kettle here so that I can do my berries in one batch. I just like to do that. I wanna add all my pectin at once, all my sugar at once. So I'm gonna move this into here so I can add my sugar and my lemon juice and everything else. So here we go. We're gonna switch pots. I am so glad I did that. I was beginning to wonder if I was getting to the bottom of that last pot, and I wasn't. So I was having berries get overcooked on the bottom. This is going to make it so much more simple. So here we go. I'm going to continue to cook down the berries and crush them up and then add my other ingredients. Okay, now that I have switched pots, so much easier. Sometimes you just have to change your path a little bit as you're canning. So here we go. I'm loving this pot. Way better. Here are my crushed berries. I like to have some whole, and I like to have some crushed up. It's totally personal preference. So does that not look beautiful? My Saskatoon berries are ready to go. So next I'm going to add my lemon juice and pectin. So let's get on to the next step. All right, my next step is to add the lemon juice. And my recipe calls for 4 tablespoons per batch. Since I have 3 batches, plus a little bit more, 4 tablespoons equals 1/4 of a cup. So I'm going to add my lemon juice for 3 batches. I like to use as much organic things as I can, so I have organic lemon juice. And I'm just going to pour it in here. There's 1/4 of a cup. Ooh, I can hear it sizzling. 2, 3, and I'm going to do a little bit more because I've got a little bit over 3 batches. Okay, the lemon juice is added. Now I need to add my pectin, 1 box per batch, so I'm adding 3 boxes. Or I should say I'm adding 3 packages. And you're adding this so that it will dissolve. And you're going to stir it and bring it to a boil. And once it comes to a boil, then you're going to add your sugar all at one time. And this recipe calls for 6 cups of sugar per batch. That's a lot of sugar, isn't it? So 6 times 3 is 18. I'm going to put my empty boxes and stuff over here, and we're going to give this a stir. There we go. Okay, and you want to bring this to a boil. Looks like my water is just about done. My jars are just about ready to boil. So by the time I get all of this done, I should be ready to process my first batch. All right, I have my berries totally boiling, and now I'm going to add my sugar. So 6 cups of sugar per batch. I'm going to do 18 cups of sugar. Woo, that seems like a lot, doesn't it? And I have all my sugar. There's 4. I have all my sugar in a huge container, so I can just buy sugar in bulk. Let's stir it up. Here's what my Saskatoon Jam looks like as I am stirring in the sugar, and it's definitely getting thick, as jam should be. So there we go. We'll keep stirring it and keep processing, and then pretty soon I will be able to put it in my jars. Here is my jam. It is at a hard boil, and I'm boiling it for 1 minute, and as you can see, the foam is totally starting to accumulate, which is absolutely perfect. That's what I want to have happen. And then is what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and scoop out 1 batch, and I'm going to add the orange liqueur to that batch, so I can have 1 batch where I can taste the new, so I can taste the orange liqueur for one of our batches this year and see if it's something we like. Oh, there's my alarm. I am now going to go ahead and skim off the foam that you see that has accumulated. All right, here I am. I'm going to take the foam off. This is what I do is I just get a little container and a spoon, and I just scrape off the foam so that I can start canning my jam. Okay, here is what I have skimmed off, and a few berries are in there, but that's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and now take the batch off, the 1 batch I want to use to add the orange liqueur. 1 batch of jam makes 7 8-ounce jars. So 8 ounces equals a cup. So I'm going to ladle out 7 cups to make a batch, if I calculated that right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now switch my pots. I'm going to take this off real quick. And I'm going to put this on here, and I'm going to add my orange liqueur. Here is the orange liqueur. It calls for 2 tablespoons in a batch. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. And I'm going to go ahead and give it a stir. I can totally smell the orange and the liquor there. How crazy awesome is that? I'm going to do a little taste test before I can this up. So here's what it looks like. Let's give a little taste. Here we go. Oh, that tastes good. I may have to do that to all my batch this year. That's good. It just adds a little extra flavor and kind of a little zing. let's go ahead and can it up.
Okay, I am now ready to put my Saskatoon Jam into the jars. So here we go. This is the exciting part, this is the end, and this is always the point of satisfaction. So let's go ahead and process the jam. I use hot dog tongs. I know that sounds really silly, but I use these to get my jars out of my water. Makes it very easy. I also have my metal or my little tool that's got a magnet on the end, and I'm able to pick up my lids very easily. I have my funnel. I love the metal funnel in particular. I use it all year round, actually. So I've got my tools and I'm all set. Let's get to filling up the jars so we can process the jam. I'm now putting my rings in my water just to be able to assure that these are also sterilized. Okay, I get to process 7 jars at a time. There are my 7 jars. When I'm pouring my jam into my jars, I want to leave 1/4 of an inch of headspace, just 1/4 of an inch from the top, which is basically, I want the jam to come right to the bottom of this. I also always like to have a little rag on hand that I can use to wipe up my lids and my jars as I'm going along here. So here we go. Oh, this is looking great. Can you see the color of this jam? Isn't it beautiful? Look at that. That is beautiful. Such a purple. Boy, I don't even know what color to call that. Purple pink. I'm going to go ahead, since I have a small pot here, I'm going to go ahead and just spoon this from here. So I don't have my big jar. I'm canning on a summer day here in our area, and it is supposed to hit 90 plus degrees today. So I am kind of on the move here to get this done so that I can then make sure my house doesn't get so heated up. I started pretty early this morning canning. You know, you kind of have to time your stuff. Oh my gosh, that is just about the perfect amount. Whoops, got a little high on that one. I'm going to take some out. Look at that. Ha! That just used just about every ounce of that. That was a perfect amount for one batch. Should have had a little spoon, because sometimes I do that. You get a little too much. You need to just take a little bit off. You want to make sure you have the right headspace, because when you're processing, you don't want too much jam, because it'll push against the jar and it could mess up your sealing of your lid. So, okay, then the next thing, I want to wipe off, make sure I don't have any jam on the top here. Jam especially, because it kind of can get in the way of having your lids seal. Okay, let's grab the lids. And I like to put them on as I'm bringing them out here out of my water. So put them on. There's a band. Another band. Last year, just as a little tidbit, my son picked our Saskatoon Jam, or excuse me, our son picked the Saskatoon berries because he wanted to sell the jam, and I do a farmer's market with my candle business, and he was able to sell jam that I made, and he picked all the berries and he made some money. So, you know, what a fun way for your children to learn how to work and have something made, and then he sold it all himself. It was all his thing. And you want to make sure your bands are in the middle, and then just, or excuse me, make sure your lids are in the middle, and then screw on your bands. And this is just my own little habit, but I just keep my finger here so my lid doesn't move while I'm screwing on the band. But you know, back to the story, my son sold all his jam and he did all his money, everything. I set him up with a little TV tray, a little table, and you know, the local people loved seeing him sell the jam. And of course, yes, he sold it all. All that we made to sell, he sold. So he did really good. Okay, I can hear my water boiling over there in my water bath canner, which is absolutely great. So just make sure your bands are on, just to kind of a nice tight. Let's put them in the canner. My jars are not that hot, so I'm going to place them right inside my canner. Oh yeah, beautiful. Let me bring you over to the canner and I'll show you what it looks like before I shut the lid. And we're going to process these once the water returns to a boil for 10 minutes. And then we'll take them out and we'll let them set up. So here's my canner. And I have all my jars in my canner. And I have not put them in the water yet. As you can see, the rack is still on the upward position. And I will put them in the water, put the lid on, bring it to a boil, and then set my timer for 10 minutes. And we'll process those, and then we'll take them out and let them set up. My timer just went off. I'm ready to take the lid off of my canner, pull my jars out, and then let the jam set up. Let's go ahead and do it. Does that look beautiful? I finished my first batch of Saskatoon Jam. I'm going to go ahead and process the rest of my jam. And in between my takes, my husband came home and I had him try the batch with the orange liqueur in it versus the batch without. Hands down, he definitely said the orange liqueur batch tasted better. And you know what? I tasted it again too. It does taste better. It adds just a little creamy, there's a hint of orange in there, but it just makes it taste awesome. It's a nice subtle addition to the jam. So if you see this recipe and you have Saskatoon berries, I'd suggest using the orange liqueur. I'm going to go ahead and add it to the rest of my batches, so all my jam this year will have the orange liqueur. I want to thank you for joining me today on Living a Sustainable Dream. And I'm Krista. And thank you for joining me for making Saskatoon Jam.